yesterday on the 14th of August, on the auspicious occasion of our 73rd Independence Day celebrations, we also put a web portal live as part of this initiative. So the North Americans in Pakistan, North America to Pakistan Investment Forum has now got another touch point, which is the Paklaunch website. It's in a way a networking platform that will enable us to take our interactions to the next level. So WhatsApp as a community instigator, initiator was a great medium and still is. And we will continue to have those more, sort of short and sort of precise conversations around knowledge sharing, information sharing through the multiple WhatsApp groups under the ambit of this this platform. But to take it to the next level and to sort of expand our influence beyond the initial community of GK alums and other VCs and investment professionals that joined us, we now have this aspiration to expand it to cover further communities from within the overseas Pakistani diaspora. So we now have a healthy representation from other top institutions back in Pakistan, like LUMS, IBA, UET, FAST, etc. So the intent is to further expand this community and in a way facilitate a two-way communication between some of the more accomplished and senior stakeholders like Shoaib Saab and some of the VC fraternity, the investment professionals that you've heard in recent times, and the slightly sort of younger, more upcoming parts of the Pakistani diaspora and technology and investment communities, so that it becomes, we can in some way show the path to those coming behind us in terms of just, number of years of exposure and where they are in their journey. So Vikas and Ali, are we good to go? Can I sort of formally kick off the discussion with Shoaib Saab? I think people have heard enough of me now. Ali, Vikas, are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again to all those who've joined us today, and again, slightly belated Happy Independence Day. Great time of the year to be taking this discussion, this platform of ours to the next level in terms of what we'd like to achieve. In terms of a brief intro, I think you all would have seen Shoaib Saab's profile as the Consul General out of the Los Angeles Embassy for Pakistan. He's based in the US, helping nurture and foster sort of more, commercial as well as sort of social public interactions on behalf of the Pakistan government there. And the reason I felt he was a great invitee for this forum on our sort of launch of the Paklaunch.com platform was primarily because of his multifaceted persona and profile. So on one hand, he's got a stellar, foreign service career that is, second to none. But at the same time, he's also got these other aspects to his experiential profile over the years, with an MBA from a top 10 American business school, with some experience working in the banking sector in Pakistan, in London, and some other corporate and regulatory affairs type profiles over the years, which I feel for people like me who come from a corporate background, or for those who are, of an entrepreneurial and sort of investment-oriented background in the community, is very, in a way compelling and inspiring, because we feel we feel we can connect with him a bit more easily because he's been on our side of the table as well before having sort of taken on the current role as a representative of our national governments as part of the Foreign Service sitting in the US. So a warm welcome and big thank you, Shoaib Saab. I understand that you've got to travel to Seattle tomorrow to be part of a Independence Day celebration rally that our community there is organizing. Yeah. So it's it's great that you've been able to spare time for us out of your busy schedule. And I'd like to kick off the conversation with a bit of a personal kind of a question, and then obviously we'll expand the ambit to cover how you in your current role have already been helping the Pakistani diaspora increase its impact in terms of commercial activity and entrepreneurial activity and collaboration with the Silicon Valley in the current role and with the as an example, the Dutch corporate sector when you were based out of the Netherlands. So the first point I'd like to ask you is, you got your undergrad here in the UK, and then you went back to Pakistan to join the civil service. Tell us a bit about that story, because a lot of us, obviously, around the virtual table here today, after having gone abroad for studies, felt that going back to Pakistan would not, in some way determine the ROI of what our parents had spent on education. So,
actually, I didn't first go to UK for my undergrad. Actually, I came to the US in '94. For a year, I was in Indiana University, Bloomington. And the plan was, and I did my freshman year there, and the plan was to do an undergrad in finance and accounting. And what happened is that in '95, when I finished my first year, my father was actually also in the government and in the federal government. He got transferred to London in Pakistan High Commission as a community welfare attaché. So I went for holidays to London, and somehow I thought that I'm not going to go back to the US. Probably I can return later on. So I thought that let me continue because the family is here. So I thought that I should get admission here. But then I got admission in University of Kent in Canterbury. Although my parents were living in London, but I didn't live in London. I was in Canterbury mainly, where I spent the next 3 years and did my undergrad. So after completing the undergrad, I completed the undergrad in 1998, and this was the time when Pakistan had just done nuclear test a few months before we graduated. I think in May we conducted the test. I came back to Pakistan, and I got a job in MCB at that time, and it was we were the first batch ever hired by MCB in grade 1 actually. But what happened, I did a training with them in Karachi, but I didn't really like the atmosphere much, to be very frank. I'll be honest with you. So I said that, to my family that I'm going to go back to London and probably do a CA. So in '99, June or July, I went back to London, and the plan was to, get a CA articleship and probably to become a chartered accountant, whatever. What had happened is that when I was in my undergrad, I had a few Pakistani friends with me too, and one of them was Mr. Umar Shahid Hamid. I don't know, some of you might have heard his name. Actually, he is a police officer at the moment, and he's a very famous writer too. And he has written those international novels like The Prisoner, mostly on the Karachi situation, which has been also, many of his novels have been also been sort of reviewed by Wall Street Journal and BBC. The latest novel he has written is on the fix. Actually, what happened is that when we were in during the break of our second and third year in undergrad, I was in UK. He returned to Pakistan. His father was a civil servant, and if you remember, it's a very famous murder case. His name was Mr. Shahid Hamid. He was KESC's MD. He was murdered by a terrorist in Karachi. what happened is, and when Umar came back to UK, back to the university, before that he had no plans to do CSS, neither I had any plans. What happened is that when we graduated, he stayed on for the masters. So when I went back to London, he was doing his masters, I think in UCL or LSC, and he had at that time made up his mind to sit in the civil service exam. So he sort of, convinced me that, what is the point of staying here? Let's go back and, sit for the civil service exam. And if we would not like it, we could always leave it later on, but as at that young age, you sort of take chances and experiment with your life. So somehow he convinced me, and what happened is that after a few weeks I came back, and both of us appeared for the exam together, and then I and have ended up in the foreign service, and he's a police officer. Presently he's posted in Karachi. So this is how it happened.
So it
wasn't planned, pre-planned or something.
So, as they say, you're influenced by the company you keep, and hence this community, being around inspirational success stories from the entrepreneurial and corporate sector is a good place for all of us to keep nourishing our ambition and aspirations in life. So sort of shifting gears a bit and going into sort of the specifics of what you've been doing over the last 3-4 years in terms of bridging the public private sector sort of gap or divide in terms of commercial impact for Pakistan. So I know from prior conversations that even during your time in the Netherlands, your previous assignment, you had a role to play in getting Wimpel.com, the parent company of Jazz, to sort of enhance their footprint or investment in Pakistan. You were involved with the Friesland Campina negotiations to go ahead and acquire Engro in Pakistan. So you've got a decent perspective on the sort of international corporate investors perception on how they look at Pakistan. So has it gotten any better over the last 3-4 years, if I was to ask you? And if you could give us some sense, as laymen, as sort of, as folks in the industry, how would you frame that the current government and, the foreign service professionals from Pakistan sitting abroad are, in a way helping our cause in this context?
I think there are more than one questions in your, so let me start from the Netherlands. In Netherlands, let me sum up my experience of dealing with interacting with Friesland Campina. Friesland Campina is the second largest milk company in the world. Let me tell you one thing, milk company. So what happened is that they almost spent 2 years, doing their homework about Pakistan's market before they finalized their deal with and did the acquisition of, Engro Foods. And during that process, once we went to meet their head, chief executive, and the question I asked him that what is it that interests you? We were just having informal discussion. What is it that interests you about Pakistan? So his response was very clear. He said that the country where, every year 4 to 5 million children are born, they need diapers, they need milk. So this sort of opportunity is not available in many markets. So all of us know, because Pakistan has we also have often arguments about what is the exact population growth rate in Pakistan, but whatever estimate you take, whether it is 1.8% or 2.2 or 2.3%, but still Pakistan's population is increasing at a very substantial rate, and we are already 220 million. And if you look at the horizon, in probably 15 years, we'll be touching 300 million people. Now, with such a population, of course, there are always challenges, but there are also immense opportunities. So all the multinationals who are in consumer business find Pakistan as a very attractive market, actually. And when they look at a long-term perspective, because they see that there are immense opportunities for growth out there, if not immediately, but also long-term. Then you also have other dynamics that in the last 15, 20 years, the middle class in Pakistan has grown substantially, and so has the consumer pattern, whereby people are more willing to spend on luxury items, brands, and these sorts of awarenesses have created an opportunity for the multinationals to sort of, have their more presence in Pakistan. And that is the reason, if you look at I haven't looked the last year's figure, but before that I had often been looking at some of these figures. If you often looked at the figures of sales figures of, for example, all the multinationals who are major players in Pakistan, like Unilever, Coke, Pepsi, all these major players. If you look at the pattern of their sales, it often outgrows in the last 10 years. It often used to outgrow more than the population growth. So which meant that there was a very visible, then people's purchasing power was increasing and people's consumer behavior were also changing, and all of that reflected that reality. Yeah, Wimpelcom is actually the holding company of Mobilink. Yeah, actually, and they also have it was a Russian conglomerate, Wimpelcom, who had done an acquisition, I think, of Egyptian firm who had the majority shares of the Mobilink in Pakistan, if I'm correct.
Yes, so, it was over, I think.
Yeah. So, yes, we also were engaged with them, and then we also, there were bottlenecks, and then we helped them, interact with the government officials at the senior level, and then encourage them to invest in Pakistan more. And I think those interactions did bear result. And Friesland Campaigner actually should have been a very transformational transaction, because the reason we felt about it very strongly is because, the milk company has actually, what we were expecting is that, if you go to the Pakistan's countryside, in the old days, the way people used to have cows and, buffaloes, and the consumption was within the household. Now, we saw that Nestle came in, then there are a couple of local players came in, and then you also see now people making, these farms where they have large number of cows and, they sell milk to Nestle. But there is not much competition there, because in a way, a couple of players have a monopoly, because if you have large number of cows, you don't have much space there, whom to sell or not to sell. So what we were expecting is, that when Friesland Campaigner will go there, it will intensify the competition and would give more opportunity to Pakistani farmers in the countryside to have more options. And once I asked the senior executive of Friesland Campaigner that how would you compete with Nestle in Pakistan, because they have a very strong presence. So his response was that, because we are mainly a milk company. So we know more about milk than Nestle, because Nestle has, many other products too. But I think when they went there, they did an acquisition. After that, they had the government in the next budget introduced some I think, new taxes on import of that dry milk, which they need to sort of, make too. And then their financial calculations change. I don't know, because I'm not in touch with them anymore. It has been 3 years that I moved from there, that, how that their experience has been. So this is the story. But when I came here to Netherlands and to the US, actually, to be very frank, I was not really involved in in this tech sector connectivity much for the first 2 years. And the reason is that we here in the consulate have a have a representative of Ministry of Commerce, which is called a commercial counselor. And mainly it is the responsibility of the commercial counselors to do these things. Of course, we chip in with our effort and connectivity. We have a more of a supporting role. But last year, I'll be very frank with you. I think there is a dramatic shift in terms of attitudes and preferences since the present government has come into power. And the reason for that, I think, is very much because it was very much part of the PTI manifesto that they would be focusing on these sectors. And to be very frank, there are a lot of people based in Silicon Valley on the West Coast who knows Prime Minister Imran Khan directly, because he used to come here because of the Shaukat Khanum Hospital and to raise funds, and then you also have his other project Namal. So they have been interacting with him directly. So and many of these people are also have a very emotional feeling about the present government too. So that thing is certainly reflective, and that led to a change in the government's visible priorities. And that's why if you can make a decision. If you look at Pakistani media too, there is more visibility of these sorts of initiatives now in Pakistan. So I think that has been also a major factor. And but what happened is that last year we had our present ambassador, he assumed, I think, the charge of his office in February or March last year. So he is very business savvy, actually. I'll say that has a lot of interest in the economic matters. And so he came here when he was visiting Los Angeles. So I think he asked me to, take a more active interest on these issues. I think probably thought I have a educational background or whatever. So after that, what happened? I think this was March last year. So I sort of started reaching out, because my job involves, connecting with Pakistanis anyway. So I already had the connection in that regard. But then I aggressively started approaching Open and, other people and some important stakeholders in Silicon Valley. And so we thought of doing a tech event, because there had never been any tech event in Silicon Valley with respect to Pakistan before, formally from the government side. So we joined hand with Open and a couple of other organizations, and we did a Pakistan Tech Summit in, I think, September or October last year. So it was the first step. But I think that also galvanized the community, because it made them realize that there is this seriousness on the part of the government, and because the governments, to be very frank, have more of at the embassies have more of a symbolic value in terms of stakeholder management. And after that, I saw pretty much private sector people. Some have organizations in Pakistan who have been coming over with the delegations, and there is another event which happened, I think, in January or February last year. There is Pakistan US Tech Exchange. Then Ministry of IT in Pakistan also started taking the things more seriously, and they have been also started supporting the delegations from Pakistan who have been coming here to attend different events. And we had planned some events there this year too, but unfortunately, this Corona has sort of pushed us back. But what has happened is that the momentum which we have had helped build, I see quite a few Pakistanis now using these virtual platforms to do these sort of activities. And this thing is now in our mind too, that we will probably also because we don't see that, the physical interaction would be possible probably by the next year, even in the first half of the next year. So probably we need to do a virtual conference too. And I have been, these days trying to brainstorm with some people like you to sort of give some ideas to how to do it better. And probably I'll be using your platform too in the days ahead to sort of, see how we can best present, Pakistan's
No, it'll definitely
new
be
evolving culture and strengths to the audience out here.
it'll be an honor for the organizing committee here to be able to help out with any future events that you're organizing. And I'm sure there are other community members on the call who would be willing to lend a helping hand in terms of showcasing Pakistani entrepreneurial talent and the business community's drive to sort of take a more proactive approach towards exporting to the international markets. And I think on those lines, just as a related point to the stories we were discussing before, pitching to European investors versus American investors, I mean, what would you tell the entrepreneurs around here? What have you observed in terms of mindset? How are they different?
To be very frank, when we say about the European mindset, to be very frank, you are sitting in Britain where British exit has already happened. Yeah. So Anglo-Saxon mindset is different than probably the mainland Europe also, Yeah. And certainly Americans have there are, of course, when we sit in Pakistan, we look at, as we say that कि सारे गोरे एक ही तरह के नजर आते हैं, but there are subtle differences how the French operate, how the Dutch operate, how the British operate, how the German operate. When you live in those societies and interact with them, then you realize that. To be very frank, my experience of interaction in Netherlands was more with the corporates, because Shell is based there and these companies are based there. This part was less, this is more about entrepreneurship in terms of startups and all that. So, but one thing which I can tell you is that when you even deal with these large corporates in Europe, the governments have a more active role actually. So there, for example, the Dutch multinationals work very closely with the government, and the governments, and even when the government delegations go, for example, when the Dutch, there was a Dutch economic vice minister who was going to Netherlands, and actually we convinced at that time through the Dutch government that the Friesland Campaigner's CEO should go to Pakistan. Friesland Campaigner was not interested at all at that time in any engagement. We said that he should go and look for himself what are the opportunities which are offered in the Pakistan's market. So the Dutch government had a role in convincing Friesland Campaigner to sort of go to Pakistan and observe that. So and this is very common in Europe. In Britain, it may be a little more different because in Britain, since Margaret Thatcher's time, there was more distance between the state and the business. But in mainland Europe, this is very common that their government and the businesses. Even once I asked a senior representative of Shell that why is Shell based in the Netherlands? You have to think, see, that Netherlands is such a small country, and if you look at it, that they have a Rotterdam port, which until few years now it has been taken by different Chinese, but was the largest port of the world. Then they have companies like Shell, Unilever, and Friesland Campaigner, Philips, all those. Why were they based in Netherlands, such a small country, which if you drive from one corner to other, in 2 hours you enter another country. Yeah. It is the way they have positioned themselves in the international market, and they told me that that Shell interacts very closely with the Dutch government. If they have an issue, Dutch Prime Minister is very easily available and all that. Whereas so but in America, my observation is, these are observations, you can disagree with that, and there can be exceptions for these general observations, that businesses generally, the government has less influence over the businesses, and the businesses operate more independently in terms of, and that also has a reason for how the corporate governance is looked at in the US and in Europe. Like when I was in NYU, to be very frank, you must have heard about Ashwin Dharmudan, who is the sort of considered the godfather of corporate finance, the most famous corporate finance professor. And he was very clear that he said that the purpose of any commercial organization can only be one, that, profit maximization, nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else. If you start using corporates for other objectives, social enterprise objectives, as they say that they have to look after the employees and, the other stakeholders, as this is often an issue in terms of the principal agent problem. So, but the philosophy in Europe is a little more different, where they have a more subtle, approach that, profit is one of the aspects too, but you have to sort of look after the employees and other stakeholders and this and that. So that thing is, I think, reflected in that approach.
Okay. And from your more recent interactions with the Silicon Valley-based American tech companies, you mentioned you had some role to play in sort of getting Amazon to sign up Pakistani exporters as sellers on the platform. I mean, it's still work in progress, but it'll be good for the community to get a sense of how behind the scenes you and the team out of the High Commission in LA is trying to help, connect the dots and bridge any gaps that exist from a regulatory support standpoint when American companies come to Pakistan.
I think I can't say a lot in public about it, because I think it's an ongoing engagement. But in Pakistani newspapers, this news had already appeared with reference to, I think a month and a half back, where they quoted the Ministry of Commerce about it. But but I was actually given the task to interact with Amazon on this issue in November last year. So before that, Amazon, still Amazon does not allow Pakistani businesses to do seller registration sitting in Pakistan, as many of you must be knowing, So I sort of reached out to them through a Pakistani community member who is in Amazon at a very senior position. So, we pitched our case, and after that, in January, Amazon agreed in principle to allow Pakistani businesses to change their policy with respect to Pakistan. So, but this is the understanding in principle. But to enable it, there are things which we have to do, and because at the moment, and it's a process is going on. So what we are trying to do is to probably do a pilot project with them first. But the real issues are, to be very frank, what we have to understand is that the phenomena of e-commerce in Pakistan is still developing. So, and we see a acceleration on this side in the last couple of years. I just read it in the newspapers that I think a couple of weeks back there was a meeting which was presided over by the president, and where he was given the briefing about the e-commerce. Now, if you want to link up with these international platforms where it is Alibaba or Amazon or any other, international platform, there are certain enabling steps you have to take in Pakistan at the government level, and it involves intergovernment coordination, where you have to, facilitation of how you will dispatch the things to credit profiles, payment mechanisms, if you want to return the thing, all these things, you people know it better than me. So in my opinion, the quicker our concerned ministries, and the Ministry of Commerce is leading this implementation and the technical side, the quicker we will be able to complete those things and do all those processes, which are not required, as I said, only for Amazon, but any other thing. If we want to move in that direction and link up our businesses and so on to facilitate our exporters, and especially our young entrepreneurs, the quicker we will be able to do that, the stronger the case for Pakistan will be. Because for Amazon, it's a win-win situation, because this is not something that if Amazon allows the Pakistani businesses to have their seller registration, sell things on Amazon platform, it is anyway. Because some sort of FDI investments, you always question whether who will gain or who will lose. But this is a situation in which both the sides have a win-win scenario. So I hope that this will lead to substantive, tangible results, and probably in few months, we will be able to see substantial progress on that. But in theory, in principle, they have agreed on this thing, but we have to give it a practical shape now,
Okay.
And there are always bottlenecks on these issues. In the end, it is a business case which we have to develop, and the volume of e-commerce will automatically grow when we have these processes streamlined, regulatory, and all these, as I have told you.
Yeah, on this forum, just to sort of mention, we have a special interest group around e-commerce, and we were talking about the dairy and sort of meat production side of things earlier. I mean, with the Friesland Campina side of things, there's another special interest group with a few entrepreneurs in that space. So NAPIF, which is now Paklaunch, has a lot of breadth in terms of the areas we cover. So, you talk about real estate, you talk about investment and stocks, portfolios, etc. So, we are covering that whole sort of canvas. And I'll now shift a bit of focus on to some of the questions that I've been receiving from within the community. And Soban Jalil has raised an interesting one, highlighting that startups are also starting to relocate within the US, especially in areas like, Austin in Texas. So
yeah, we know that. Yeah.
So the work that, you are sort of spearheading with the California or the LA/SF based, commissions, is there some knowledge sharing or collaboration with other consulates that helps those other ecosystems to also benefit from what you're trying to do? Because there is a significant Pakistani diaspora in Texas as well, from what I understand.
Yeah. There even the U.S. State Department also has a program where I think they come in Austin, where every year some Pakistanis, entrepreneurs come there for a course, some sort of a training on the issue. As regards the knowledge sharing between the consulates is concerned, for example, there was our New York consulate did an event on tech sector in Pakistan, the IT sector, just I think couple of weeks back. And when their concerned officer was planning this, he discussed the things with me, and I shared our experience with them on this issue. And the thing is, Ali, one of the things you have to remember is, like, there is always this thing. Once you start this thing, if, for example, my approach on the issue was that if we will start doing it, others will also have to do it, because people then start, comparing, and then also people also learn from these things, and it also helps build a momentum. And another thing I tell you, that normally I have seen that the delegations which come from Pakistan of the startups often go to, if they come to California, they often go to Texas to, these sorts of things. There's a strong startup venture capital culture now developing in New York, in Boston. So, I know that's true. And technology is a great enabler, to be very frank. It doesn't really matter where you're sitting these days, as long as you have the connectivity.
Great. So any upcoming events or activities on your calendar which you feel our community should know about? And if people are, for instance, you mentioned you're traveling to Seattle tomorrow for a celebratory event around the Independence Day. I mean, is there a way for our community to be made aware of your community outreach programs and any sort of commerce related trade shows or road shows that you do, so that they can sort of get onto that bandwagon and in a way strengthen your cause?
We have a Facebook page on which we often make announcements. The other thing is we will definitely be doing an event on technology focus, but I think I want to go in more detail in this regard this time than just having a general information, probably sector wise, So probably we'll be able to shape it up in a month and then make it public, that the date and all that. There are a lot of good things happening in Pakistan. Many people don't know. Let me share with you. For example, on the banking side, you will see probably this, the launch can happen any day, that soon overseas Pakistanis will be allowed to open digital banking accounts sitting in the US or anywhere in the world. And by opening these digital banking accounts, you would be able to buy, different investment products or do investments in different sorts of schemes in Pakistan, whether, government bonds and savings and all that. I believe it will be a very revolutionary thing, because a lot of Pakistanis even have an issue with the payment transfer of money, and their bank accounts get freeze because if you don't use it there for 6 months, then you have to reactivate it, and there's often complaint about banking. I think this step is very revolutionary, and I myself talked to the president of the Habib Bank few days back on this issue, and he verified it to me that that State Bank has done a lot of work on that, and Habib Bank is also certainly one of the major players because there are 6-7 banks who will be providing those services. And then we also had a meeting with the governors, virtual meeting with the governor State Bank few days back, and they also confirmed that. I think that can be rolled out any day. What I've heard is that the Prime Minister is going to inaugurate that. It's a major change, to be very frank. So there are a lot of good things happening behind the scene, and which will help make it more easy for overseas Pakistanis to do business in Pakistan and overcome these issues which they currently face. Even on the venture capital side, there were some changes introduced in the laws recently which made it more easy to do investment. And so I think there will be tangible progress from now to in a year's time, on these fronts actually.
So that's really, I mean, in some way I can relate to that personally, because I was in Pakistan in December, and trying to open a US dollar denominated or a euro denominated account as an overseas Pakistani was quite a hurdle, because the standard workflow requires, salary slips and things of that.
Yes.
So what you're describing is denominated in any currency, just out of curiosity, or is it PKR only to begin with?
To be very frank, I don't remember. I was told about that, but I don't remember that it is only Pak rupee. I think that it also involves foreign currency, but I know you would be able to buy other government bonds and all those things. This is what I've said. I don't see any reason that why would they restrict the foreign currency account on that, to be very frank.
Yeah, and on the chat window, I've posted the, I guess most people will probably know the consulate website anyways, but the Facebook page is called Consulate General Pakistan, Los Angeles. So, for community-oriented events and any, trade shows, etc., as Shoaib Saab mentioned, you can follow the Facebook page to be kept up to date with their upcoming events.
And to be very frank, it's my open offer. If your organization plan to do any event like that, they think, please feel free to reach out to us in any way we can help, or you want to partner with us. We are open to any idea. on that, and you will find us a willing partner.
That's very kind
Or
of
if
you.
you want to need our help to invite the relevant stakeholders or want to seek our input, any way we can help. I'll be very frank. I have a very open and frank interaction with the open chapters, both in the Silicon Valley as well as here. So but unfortunately, with the momentum we built, we got a hit because of this corona. But this is not something which we can do about. This is a global phenomenon.
Yes. I distinctly recall, I think 2 to 3 weeks before the lockdowns, you had reached out to me to mention if there was any possibility of getting the Prime Minister as a keynote speaker at the University of California, Berkeley, because he was going to visit the US, I think in September.
But now that was the plan. So we were planning to bring him over to Silicon Valley, to meet with the Pakistani tech people. And as per my knowledge, there has never been a Pakistani Prime Minister or President who came here just to focus on the IT sector in the last 25, 30 years. And not to my knowledge. There is one, I don't know of that.
And I think in terms of the questions that I can see on the screen, Raheel Bodla had mentioned, how your sort of, platform can help any startups looking to join accelerator programs in the Silicon Valley, or if there's any events, any activities on your end plan to showcase the Pakistani startup talent in the Valley.
Raheel, if you have I know Raheel, and I keep following the various, activities he keeps on doing to sort of help people, and I think he's doing a commendable work. Actually, NIC in Pakistan, which have been these national incubation centers, and the Ministry of IT has the main responsibility. If he has any particular proposal, or he thinks that this is the way, to be very frank, different countries have even, used different mechanisms to reach out to Silicon Valley. If any of you are in the knowledge of a better way of doing things, please share the experience with us, and we would forcefully, send it to the concerned people in Pakistan to, adapt those best practices. And let me tell you one thing. Another thing that we know that the U.S. government has also been in the past very supportive of these sorts of visits. But in the recent times, we have also actively, sort of engaged with them on these issues to sort of have a more coordinated, effort on that front. So there are a lot of things going on.
Great, sir. Muneeb Salim has a question about OPF, which is the Overseas Pakistanis Foundation, having started a Naya Pakistan calling program to connect successful leaders from different industries to come in as advisors for government agencies. Is this something which is still functional? If so, can this community be of any help in that regard?
To be very frank, I don't have first-hand information about it. What I know of these initiatives is, as you read in the newspaper, the best way to go to know about it is go on the OPF website. But if he wants any specific information, we can, get it from the ministry, concerned ministry on that. So he has my contact details. Please feel free to reach me out, and I'll help you with that.
No, I think it's been a great conversation. I have certainly really enjoyed speaking to you and getting a sense of what's happening behind the scenes from a formal sort of government side in terms of furthering this agenda. You mentioned the President of Pakistan also, even though he has a dentistry background, he's very passionate about technology as well, and is launching artificial intelligence related programs.
He has. I know this personally. that he has also, interacted directly with Pakistani Silicon Valley based people too, without the involvement of the embassy. And I know they are very successful Pakistanis based in Silicon Valley, and to very frank, very eager to help Pakistan. And, so this tells you that the sort of priority that the present government gives to this sector. But certainly, I'll be honest with you. Some people might be thinking that there is might be expecting a more quicker progress on these issues. But there is, these things, governments don't work on that pace, to be very frank. And especially when you start working for a cultural shift, well, this is a this is a strategic shift also. Historically, in Pakistan, when people ask me about venture capital and all that, we can say that Pakistan, has still lacks many things, but we also have to look at the culture when we were growing up. I remember it was unimaginable to be thinking about, especially in a family where, your father or anyone were government servants or working for a private organization, to say that I want to do this entrepreneurship or I want to experiment with this life, with this sort of life. So you would sort of have a reaction. But now you see the most cool thing is that there is a cultural shift in Pakistan happening, and you see young guys, saying that, no, I don't want to work for that multinational. I would have my own startup. Many ventures don't succeed, but this is a great learning and people are more willing to accept risk taking and all these things. So at the government level also, there has been a very dramatic cultural shift, and those things have been in the pipeline. And I think that in the next 1 year, you will see the results of many of the reforms that the government is presently undertaking on that front too.
Great. I think we're now into the last 5 minutes of our conversation. So if there are any other questions, kindly post them on the chat window. There's a new one, an interesting one, I think, for us to have a better appreciation of the role that our consulates the world over have. So there's a question, how do you measure success? What are your KPIs as a consulate that's representing Pakistan? Obviously, some of those are tangible, some would be intangible, sort of policy and sort of, the quality of the relationship type measures.
It depends on what are your responsibilities. For example, if somebody is tasked with the supervision of a consular work, how would you respond to, how would you judge his performance? The consular work is, the documentation turnover time, telephone calls are responded, how many complaints, behavioral issues, these sorts of quality control. If there is a complaint, why is there a complaint? The complaint may be legitimate, they may not be legitimate. So these sorts of things, because that can be quantified. For example, we 3 years back, I just give you an example. We had an issue about dealing with phone calls. Certainly, we have a resource constraint, and to be very frank, I'll tell you one thing. You call any country's embassy in Pakistan, or most of the consulate embassies now don't have this mechanism whereby anyone can call. But we still have this process because you have to email these days, to be very frank. But we have sort of maintained this thing. So we wanted to improve the response, that the people should be responded more promptly. What we started doing is that the person whom we had specifically appointed, we gave him a register. So he maintains the data of all the calls, that time, the calls came at this time, this and that. So we now, because of the COVID, less people are traveling. But at the peak time, last year probably there used to be 80, 100 calls responded by that person in a day. So and we were personally observing it, these sorts of things. We have mechanisms in place. But on the other side, if you have a new initiative, if you take a new initiative, then these outreach efforts, anything new you are doing, what are the impacts? So there are ways of, doing that thing. As regards the commerce side is concerned, the Commerce Ministry can respond to their officer, because mainly it is their responsibility to, judge his performance, because you can say that commercial counselors have a role in increasing trade or decreasing trade, but I don't know whether it is linked to that or whether they operate more at a strategic issue. So these are the issues which are always, because it is always important that you judge people on the basis on which they can control, they can directly make an impact. If you start judging people or on something on which they can't influence, then that also creates a dichotomy, like in any private organization.
Yeah. Khurram wants to know if there's a way for us to reach out to you to share ideas or initiatives. So
yes. Rather, I'll be very honest with you. Whatever little things we or Consulate we have been able to do is because of the feedback and the advice of people like you. So please do, that would be a great favor. Even when you talk to us, I interact with people like you. This Bodla, even Raheel, I have interacted with him, but it's always a learning for me, to be very frank. These are learning experiences for me too. And when we come to know about these things and we learn these things, we share these observations and whenever we give the input to the government on these issues, those are based on the experiences, advices, or from people like you who are more well versed on with these things. So, and technology is young man's game, to be very frank. the older you become, it becomes difficult to sort of. It's like I think test batsman, where the older you become, your reflexes you get weaker, and then you have to practice. So I think technology, the best person to learn is the young one, who are full of idea, energy, innovation, and are more at hand with the new technologies and stuff.
So I think
so I consider myself that it's more important for me to learn to connect with young people, to have that openness to learn from them.
No, Shoaib sir, that's very kind of you to frame it this way. And I think what you've described is very well aligned with the vision and mission of what we have created here as well. Because, in all honesty, the 3-4 months of the lockdown, the kind of ideas that have gotten shared on our community, our platform here, they've also fast-tracked our own sort of learning agility and appreciation of what's most relevant and what areas to focus on if we are to in some way help the Pakistani diaspora internationally connect back and contribute to Pakistan. So I guess in a simple way, your consulate's got a Facebook page which lists out some of the contact details as well, and through the NAPIF forum as well, we'll obviously be extending you an invite to join our platform as well. So
And Aleem, I just want to tell you that your new High Commissioner to London, Mr. Mozam Ahmed Khan, who is coming in 2-3 weeks, he has been my ambassador in Netherlands. And he was the one actually who convinced Friesland campaigner to, he has never claimed, I think, credit for that publicly, but I know that. He was the one who convinced Friesland campaigner to look at Pakistan's market. And then, this whole process started. So, so he is very business savvy, to be very frank. And I would strongly urge you are sitting in London to take advantage of that. And if I can be of any help of getting you and your team in touch with him, please let me know. I'll be very glad to help you on that.
That's very kind of you, Shoaib Saab. So, having you on the West Coast in the US, and then once Mozam Saab's here in the UK, I think for our community, it's, it's very encouraging and energizing to know that if we need any sort of formal support and guidance from our high commissions in our respective countries, then we can look at you guys for advice and guidance. And a lot of times it's about moral support and being able to in a way sort of keep things, help us keep things moving if there's any kind of unforeseen roadblock along the way. So I'm again very grateful to you for having spared time for us, sharing your insights, your experiences with us, and we hope to keep this relationship an ongoing one, not just a one-off talk today. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I can tell you that at the moment there's, let's say 300 to 350 overseas Pakistanis part of this community globally, with a heavy density in the US, in Texas and the West Coast predominantly. So with events that you're doing, with initiatives that you're doing, if you need volunteers to help out with anything, if you need to bounce off ideas for what will be most helpful for the business community, we're there to help you in our capacity.
So let's agree in principle about doing an event, IT focused event, and we can discuss about that by Consulate and your organization, joining hands on that if you are okay with that.
That's okay. I would say that's music to our ears, because
okay.
We would be honored to be able to formally
definitely.
Okay, Ji, I guess we're 2 minutes above the initial 1 hour slot that we had with you. Once again, a huge thank you, and really appreciate you having spared the time to speak to us. And look forward to the next time we connect together for another. I guess it'll have to be a virtual collaboration for the foreseeable future. But at some point, I think Ali intends to organize happy hours and networking events in the Bay Area, and I'm sure there would be people from LA, part of the community, who would also love to engage with you.
If Ali does it, I know there are gathering restrictions these days, but whenever he does it, I'll be very glad to go and visit his team out there.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your participation, and look forward to seeing some of you next week. Thank you, and Allah Hafiz, and once again a belated happy Independence Day. I think those of us sitting abroad, we find deeper meaning with the 14th of August celebrations, even listening to patriotic songs on social media and all. It's very nostalgic and energizing. So obviously it's in keeping with the spirit with which this community was formed. So a happy Independence Day celebration, and have a great weekend ahead. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.